What brought you to Fort Collins?
Well, we were in San Diego when I got declared disabled, and disability does nothing good for your income. And San Diego was in the midst of one of its famous real estate bubbles. Housing prices and cost of living were going through the roof. We didn't own a house at the time, and we really couldn't afford a house in San Diego at the time. And my thought was, if my eyes were in trouble, that it would be easier to live in a smaller, more manageable city that had public transportation and really what I called quality of life. You know, being stuck in traffic everywhere you go for an hour was pretty difficult. And at the time I could still see okay, but I couldn't foresee if that was always going to be the case. So we wanted a more compact town.
And when you got to Fort Collins, what year was that?
We moved here in 2008, October of 2008.
And were you employed, or were you already unemployed at that point?
Now, I'd been declared disabled at the end of 2003, so I'd already been disabled for a couple of years.
And I know people who are watching this are going to be very curious about what you look like without your glasses. Is there any way you can just quickly do that?
Sure.
And while you're doing that, can you explain why you're wearing a hat in addition to glasses inside the house?
We have overhead lights on, and these glasses, no matter how many pair I wear, don't protect the light from shining down behind my glasses, and I have very light sensitive eyes.
So you've taken off your first layer and now you have a second layer?
I do, and I can take off my glasses, and that's what I look like without them.
And if you would open your eyes right now, what is the impact on you?
It feels like when you walk out of a movie theater after seeing a matinee and you kind of forget it's still daylight, and you walk out and the sun hits you and it's overwhelmingly bright. And that's how people with normal eyes feel for a few seconds. They just clamp their eyes shut and squint against the light, and that's sort of how I feel in the presence of light all the time.
Even just indoor lighting, not necessarily the sun.
Even just indoor lighting.
I was doing some research on you, just what's being said about you on social networks, on the computer, and I've learned that you have a reputation for loving outdoor activities. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in Southern California, I did all the triathlon stuff. I skied, I hiked, I mountain biked, I camped. And while it was something I plain and simple enjoyed, it was also, I didn't know it at the time, but it was a really good way to deal with the problem that my eyes had with cramping. The cramping could be helped by keeping the world at infinity rather than staring at books and computers all day. It was the best thing I could do for my eyes to be out in the world and looking off at a distance. So all the things I loved anyway were good for me, which made me pursue them more. When Diana and I were pursuing the next place that we were going to live, one of the things we wanted to do was not lose any of the great outdoor activities. And in fact, if we could, we'd pick up a few. And Fort Collins is famous for its outdoor lifestyle. And one of the things we were looking forward to picking up was the rivers, kayaking. But I didn't have to give up skiing or snowshoeing or hiking or mountain biking or any of the things we'd come to love.
In a few weeks, you are traveling to the Mayo Clinic, I believe.
I'm going to Stanford in Northern California.
To Stanford. And what is the main purpose of your trip there?
I don't think it's overly dramatic to say it's to save my life.